You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
All right, we are live. Welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast. Today, we've got an awesome topic that we just did a masterclass on. We're going to talk about some of the lessons that were learned by the coaches in our masterclass on that initial discovery session. How do you deliver sessions that sell? That's what we're here to talk about today. Faisal, want to add anything before we jump right in?
Yeah, definitely. For coaches who are watching us or listening to us on the podcast or Facebook Live, and if you're in our community, if you're just new, welcome to our community. And coaches who have been here longer, we have a lot of resources for you. We do master classes every month to support you. We have our mastermind sessions on Thursdays that we broadcast live to make sure that you can actually learn how you can build your business and serve clients at a higher level. Now, all these free resources that we have is so you can be supported, and so we can build a relationship and trust and connection with you guys, so you understand that we're here long term to support you to build that business to serve your clients. Now, we also have programs that are at a higher level, which means that we have 3 other tiers of programs that will support you to actually move forward. And there's so many amazing things in there, from helping you create the right leads in your business, to helping you understand how you can do the sales process better, to giving you the community that gives you feedback, hold your hand along the way. And any questions that you might have around your business, around your coaching, we're here to support you with that. So we have multiple levels of that program. It's on the paid range, and there's an investment involved in there. We just want to make sure that you know that we have that level of support for you, and that's part of our program. So if you haven't gone on a call to learn more about our program and how that might support you, please let us know. We don't accept every coach. You need to be qualified for that. So in most cases, you will have to be on a call with us for us to even understand to offer that program to you.
All right. Well, so back to our topic. Thank you, Faisal, for sharing that. It's really important for coaches to be in community and to develop together. We've learned that lesson the hard way many times. And one of the things that we talk about in community on Monday, we did a masterclass for a whole community, which you could attend free, and we can send you the replay if you want. But more importantly,
if you want the replay, just put #delivery so we can share the recording with you.
Yeah, in the comments. Right. So we talked about one topic that is like so important for coaches, right? If you are a coach and you don't have a process for your first coaching call with a client. So I'm not talking about the like, hey, should we have a call conversation? I'm talking about the strategy call or the discovery call or the intro call, whatever you want to call it. If you don't have a process for that, you're probably not converting as many people into clients that could really benefit from what you do. Right. So what we talked about, we presented a whole framework on how to do that call. And this is from like thousands of sessions of experience, and multiple coaches have analyzed what we've been doing in sales calls, and we've brainstormed within our community and gotten tons and tons of feedback and data to figure out what are the patterns of these sales calls and how does each of us do it and what's working and what doesn't work. And we figured out how to demonstrate, how to display that simply in a framework. So if you haven't seen that, definitely get the masterclass and watch it and understand. What we're going to talk about today is the things that people learned in our session on this framework. And maybe we should, Faisal, really briefly talk about the framework and the different steps. So there's the first step, which is connecting with your clients in the session. So within the session that you're doing, the discovery session, you have to connect and build rapport first. Then you need to explore and clarify a lot of the things that in the short term matter to them. Like, what are their goals and desires right now? What are their challenges and obstacles right now? What do they care about feeling? Like, what makes them happy and unhappy? All those things we want to cover and not coach on them. We want to clarify and help them understand those things. So you both understand them, actually.
Yeah,
and then
not solve for it, but clarify. But we are coaching.
Yeah, coaching. Yeah. So coach, when I say coaching in this context of a discovery session, not doing the solving problems with them together coaching, I'm talking about the clarifying coaching, right? So if I say you're not coaching, what I mean is you're not solving it. You got to hold back, the solving slash like coaching and in favor of the clarity coaching. That's like the most important part of the second step here. When you're exploring goals or challenges or emotions, get them really clear, but don't solve the things that come up yet. After that, step 3 is really think about the longer term vision for their life, the greater context for their life, what really ultimately matters to them. And then you can start coaching on the things that that are going to be important for them to have an experience of coaching with you and to move something forward. That's step 3. Actually do your coaching. Bring your magic, bring your tools, help them make progress. And then obviously from there, you can ask them, do you want to continue doing this outside of this session? And then you can make your offer. So that's step 4, which is making the offer. So there's lots of things that go into that. Obviously, we're oversimplifying it here. We only have a certain amount of time in the podcast, but watch the masterclass. There's so many good things in there on each of these steps.
Yeah, it's like power packed with 2 hours, and not only the framework that we shared, where we've gotten perspective from other coaches, what they've tried, what they learned in the process, and we're going to talk about that shortly. But there's a lot in there, even within each of the sections that we cover in detail. So we didn't go at the end of it. It's like, oh, you need another session to describe the delivery session. No. That's like all the pieces. The only piece that we couldn't go into was the offer piece. Which we talked about the transition of it. The reason we couldn't go into the offer is because we literally did not have any more time left at the end of it. But exactly how you'd structure your call, how you'd support them in every section, this level of detail, you will find it in paid programs, but you're getting it. So if you're listening to it on the podcast, on the live Facebook group, just type #delivery. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, just reach out to us on any of the channel. I'll put it in the comments, whether it's YouTube or podcast, wherever it is. We're usually on Facebook and Instagram are the main channels, or you can email us. You will find the contacts below, and we'll be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, awesome. So let's talk about Faisal, about some of the things that coaches learned on that masterclass, because these are going to be really powerful for people on the podcast. Let's talk about some of the things that stand out. Why don't you start us off, Faisal? What did you hear from coaches that was like their personal mind-blowing insights or ahas that they had?
I think the top one was that I need a framework. It's like a lot of coaches get into these sessions and they might not have and they lose confidence in their process because they don't actually have a process. They might have a loose process based on the certification they went through. But a lot of the times coaches get lost in the conversation, and it's hard for them to kind of follow a process to get clients to an outcome, towards a result. And the whole point of the framework is to help clients get to an insight, an action, realization, a decision that they will make, or these insights that they would have that they wouldn't otherwise have. Now, you could do it without a framework, but it will be all over the place. And I remember the beginning stages of my own coaching career where I would get lost in the conversation. I would get to the end and I would feel rushed. I'm like, there's no way I can offer anything at the end of this, because like it's still continuing. And on top of that, I didn't know what to do on the next call. And on top, or I would just continue the call. Like I've done like 3, 4, 5. I think I've done up to 4-hour calls, and by the end of it, it's like I'm exhausted and the client is exhausted and we don't know what to do out of that. And I didn't even know how to approach it. But it didn't even need to happen at 4-hour range. You could do it in 60 minutes, 90 minutes, in 2 hours if you had a clear framework to do this. And at the end, the client himself or herself will tell you whether or not they want more of that coaching process. So the biggest one that I saw was that, yeah, we need to have a framework. And there are a few other ones in there, but that was one of the biggest ones that almost every coach in there is like, hey, we actually realized that I need to follow these steps, and we gave timelines for each of these steps as well.
Yeah, and I think that if you're listening to this podcast right now, the question you could ask yourself is, do I have a clear process that I follow for my discovery calls? It's basically, do I have a clear process? And when you do have it, am I being the leader of these calls? Are you you need to lead the client? This is another insight people had, is like, you're leading. You can't just wander around and hope that it is an effective session for what the client needs, because this is like one of your first coaching experiences with them. You want to help them understand their own life, and you need to understand it too, so you know where to coach, so you know how to make sure that the program is actually a fit for them, is relevant, all those things. And so having a process for this and leading them through that process and having them feel that you're leading them through the process is a big part of that.
Yes. And a lot of the insights were in the specific categories. For example, in the first category around connection, one of the things that we shared was creating a positive frame, but more importantly, connecting with them at a level whether you do it through story or otherwise. We do recommend sharing some kind of story that connects you with the client, a vulnerable story. That was an important realization for many of the coaches, because that story, and many of the coaches actually did do it. So they shared in the masterclass that they actually shared their story, and they share why they're doing this thing. A lot of ways. And we even talked about how you can share bits and pieces of stories that are relevant to the client or relevant to that specific discussion. And the challenge is that a lot of coaches who come out of certifications, like at the baseline, they're taught, don't make this about you. And that's not what we're saying. Yes, don't make this about you. The story needs to connect directly to the client, whether you're communicating why you're doing this or how do they feel connected with you? Because if they don't trust you and they don't have a connection with you, it's hard for clients to open up. It's hard for them to be vulnerable. It's hard for you to actually challenge them. You will hear a lot of things like, I don't know, when you ask them, or you will feel resistance when you're pushing them and challenging them in different areas. So that was a big realization that I need to consider a story or a better way of connecting with my clients so the rest of the session goes well.
And actually, the other thing that came out of that too, in that discussion, people were commenting on was stories are not about you. They're actually, so like the top rule in coaching is it's not about you, it's about the client. Yes, the story about you is actually about your client. It's about making them feel connected. It's about helping them understand that this is a safe space for them to share more too. You're doing this for their best interest. You're not sharing it because it's about you. You're sharing something about yourself because it's good for the client in this context. And then the second part of that is there are places in your session where your own stories will be relevant and beneficial to the client. That's always what I say is like, is this story beneficial or am I just saying because I want to talk about myself? It's like, no, you'll get a feel for which stories are relevant when with your client and you'll bring them up. And the way to know whether that's actually beneficial is when your story is done, is this client going to take away something that's relevant to what you're talking about? Right? And are you going to be able to clearly connect it to the topic of the conversation where you're at? And so this happens at the beginning in the sense that they're trying to get to know you. So you're connecting them to you with your origin story and maybe your why about coaching. But later on in the session, there's other little things that are going to come up. So there's ways for them to get to know you. That way they're going to feel like, oh, you're sharing, I can share too. And then they're going to be able to share things that are actually relevant to their journey. So they can get clarity, you can get clarity, and then they can make a better decision going forward about whether you're somebody they want to work with, right? Yeah. So it's a win-win it's a win for them, even though you're sharing about yourself.
Yeah, and there's so much in there. So we've had actually multiple conversations around how you structure your story within our community. We've had trainings on this because that one little part of that first section is so important. And that, by the way, your story, if you're a coach, your story defines how you connect with your clients, whether you share it on a podcast, on your coaching sessions, on your posts. And there's a term for it, expert story positioning, and there are other terms for it too. If you don't know how to communicate that, it's very hard for you to connect with clients. And most coaches, they struggle to share that in a way that is coherent. So that's part of our community. That's one of the things that we consistently discuss is how do we connect with clients with what matters to us? Because usually, as Simon Sinek would say, people don't buy your service or product, they buy your why. It's like, why are you doing this thing? Why is this so important for you? Because they need to understand that there's something beyond what you're offering that is important to your heart or to your brand, whatever that might be. But there's a lot in there.
I would go a little farther. I'd say they're not buying your why only because they're actually buying the thing that they want, the results that they're seeking in their life. But they will be more able to make that buying decision if they bought your why already. If they've already personally bought it internally, right? They're not actually buying the reason that you do coaching. They're buying their stuff that you're going to help them achieve with the coaching, right? But without understanding your why, it's harder for them to buy. Like, how do I know that I can trust you to actually show up for me? Because I've had questions at the beginning. It's like, what's the program going to be like? I'm like, it's going to be exactly like what we just did, but just long term and better. And then the first couple of sessions, the person came in with me and was like, I was really worried about this, being there's just a whole bunch of money and really like a bait and switch. And I can see that it was totally worth it in the first couple sessions. And the reason is part of the reason for that is when I share my story, they understand that I'm in this with them for the long term. I'm not going to disappear because I care so much about this. Care so much about them and their situation because I've been through an experience that made me care about this. And they could feel my passion feeling that, right? And so that makes them more comfortable to make that decision, right? And even then, they still have their own worries about that process, right?
Yeah.
People are
I mean,
afraid
that's human. That's
yeah.
normal.
I actually hired a coach once who stopped showing up for me, who actually was not like actually in full transparency. This was a barter early in my coaching days, and I was coaching them, and they were coaching me on something different. And I turned out I couldn't trust them to show up for the sessions. It was hard to get a hold of them. I delivered my part of it professionally, but they did not deliver their part professionally. And so I'm just glad I didn't do a longer term engagement with them or pay for that, because that would have been very, very disappointing. And so knowing that you're going to show up is actually really, really important.
Yeah, I love you're actually bringing up, and that's happened to me too. So after a while, I stopped doing that. If somebody wants to coach me on a specific service, I tell them, like, just walk me through your normal process. I'd be happy to pay, and if you want my coaching, you can pay me, even if it equals out at the end, even if it's like, and that's happened before for me. Every time I've done a barter, so it really depends on how you have to really trust this person that they're going to show up in a specific. So if you're doing barter, it might or might not work, but a lot of times it's probably worth it to just pay the coach that you want and be coached. And that's part of the reason why our community actually works, because we have our chain within it, but they're actually paying to be part of the chain. They're not doing it for free, even though it like
Everybody's committed. Yeah,
everybody's committed in the process. That's why it works better than kind of beta coaching outside.
it's one of the reasons. There's a bunch of reasons in there. But anyway, back to the topic of our discovery sessions. We have a few more minutes here. What else stood out to you, Faisal, from our discussion with the coaches who are learning this process?
Yeah, one of the sections in there, and the one of the first sections, I think it was around the challenge area when we're going into struggles. And the second section, a lot of newer coaches will jump in and they try to solve for a quick problem, because it gives them like it's easier to do that. But what we were teaching in the process was that you need to hold off on that. Do a lot of discovery in the beginning, so you understand what are the problems and challenges that really matter to them, that they really feel that they need to solve for. That will come together after you understand their short-term and long-term plan, and after you understand what matters to them in the process. Then you can solve for one or two things, or one big thing that you're going towards. Now, a lot of the coaches, that was one of the insights, is that, oh, it's easy for me to jump in. And then it is. Like, it takes actually a lot of restraints to not jump into a problem that they're sharing right there that might not even mean anything to them at the end of the session. And they'll be like, oh, okay. That one, they kind of get the false sense of security or solution for themselves, because most of their bigger challenges cannot be solved in that one session. Yeah, and two, we didn't actually dig into the areas that really mattered to them. And so we didn't even get the opportunity to open up that area that they really need to deal with. For example, I had a client that actually signed up yesterday. I was telling you about this last week. I said that I know he's going to sign up. Like, I was sure before even the offer call. And I had the sales call yesterday with them. It was a 30-minute follow-up call, and the strategy session that I did, discovery call for 2 hours that I did, that didn't even go into the areas that he came to me for. It just became about his realization that he needs to pay attention to his relationship with his wife. That is it. I didn't even solve for anything. It's just, by the end of it, he understood so deeply the impact of his relationship with his wife, the impact of it on his kids, on his business, on every part of it, his life and his future vision, that he's like, he was in shock at the end of it. I could tell.
Yeah, if you do a great job of the clarity coaching, you've already probably added enough value and demonstrated in some ways your coaching skills. And you may not need to do any coaching or solving because they've already gotten the experience. But it's simpler to say, do the clarifications and then do the coaching, especially for newer coaches. It's easier that way, right? But once you get more facility with the process, you know that the clarity coaching part is so powerful that they might actually have the big insight they need already by the time you get to the end of that part. And now you're both super clear on a lot of where the focus needs to be for them going forward. And you can learn still about the other areas in their life that this is going to be important for. But like in that example, you had this one realization about the relationship. That's going to affect so many other areas. And the key is to extend these insights to other impacts in their life, other people, other roles, other circumstances, other versions of the same thing happening elsewhere, and to help them see there's so much opportunity for them to dial this up, for them to achieve what they're trying to achieve and like solve those obstacles. But we're not going to be able to do all of them right now, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't come to you because it was an easy thing to solve. So that's where you can naturally transition to the offer once you have some significant insight for them, and you've demonstrated that you can coach them and they can trust you long term, which is where the story comes in and all that. Then you can transition to the offer and say, like, hey, it's really simple. Like, do you want to keep doing this? Is the simplest way. And if the answer is yes, like, well, here's how much it costs.
Yeah, and I literally asked the clients like, would you like to continue in a coaching like this? Would this kind of coaching serve you moving forward? It's like, yeah. And then when we got on the next call, the two things he shared that was really powerful for me to hear. One, that he's like, I wish I had met you 5 years ago, because that's when his challenges started. Which like when you hear that, and this is why, like, when you meet a client that you can serve, don't give up on that, because you might be the last person that they talk to, and they will go on for the next few years and completely forget about their problem or suppress it or put it on the side. I wish I had met you 5 years ago. And he's like, this is so much worth it for me than what I thought this coaching would be. But now all that stuff that he thought, coach, that's also part of the coaching process. Now that raises the value to a whole other level. Now, just a couple of other things in there that were big realizations. One, understanding their long-term outcome is very, very important. Yes. And one of the reasons why with this client I was able to connect, because when he saw his vision, when he described his ideal life, one of the most important components of the ideal life was with his wife, with his relationship, and how their family dynamics were and how he wants to feel, even though he kept avoiding the conversation throughout. But that's what he wanted. And the more he talked about it, I could tell clearly he hadn't thought enough about his vision of what he wanted in his life. And he felt that he's like, oh, shoot, this is important to me. So had he not connected it to what he wants 5 years down the road, he would have just continued on doing whatever he was doing, because he thought it was like, if I just focus on my kids and my business, everything would be just fine.
And almost nobody makes those connections in their mind on their own, because they're not taking the time to reflect and to really think and journal about what they want. And the coaching environment can create a really powerful space for them to do that, maybe for the first time ever or the first time in a long time. And even something simple like, oh, I want my relationship to feel like this. Have they ever even expressed that out loud to anybody? Maybe not. And even if they have, it's like, oh, yeah, I needed that reminder right now of what I want in life. And so that can be so powerful. Even just clarifying and helping people share what they actually want longer term, or their life context in general to be, can be really, really powerful.
Yeah. And also part of the reason why, like, a lot of things come up for people in these coaching sessions. So part of the reason why he didn't, like, one, there was too much pain, so he had completely removed it from his awareness consciously. But there were alarming signs that I had to kind of feed it back to him, that, hey, because they were not only living like roommates, but he had to an extent given up on the relationship. And I had to ask questions like, if this continues, what do you see? Initially, he couldn't even see his wife in his future. I'm like, is that what you want? But like, these are things that we feel, but we don't bring, they're not in the conscious awareness piece. We're just busy with things that we're doing. And clients do that. Now, it doesn't have to be on the relationship side. That same thing could happen in a different piece of their life. That same thing could happen in their health. That same thing could be happening with they're focused on the relationships, but their business is just tanking, or their future of their job is tanking, and they haven't even thought about it. But the discovery helps you connect all the pieces. And then at the end, there might be a solutioning process that you come up with. But the whole thing might be is like, I never thought of it in this way.
It's the nature of life that we don't pay attention to the things that matter to us for periods of time, right? Where we'll fill our time with the things that we're trying to get done, and we don't actually remember what we're actually feeling, right? And so most people go through that, and they can spend years, they can spend decades avoiding those things. That actually really, really matters. So that's what you find out in the discovery call. You find out what matters, what's gonna matter, and what this person will need to overcome all the struggles that are preventing them from getting to what matters. So it's really ultimately what you do in the discovery call, and you help them make a decision, whether it's taking action in their life or signing up for coaching for you. Those are just examples of decisions that you can help them get the courage and the clarity to make.
Yeah, for sure. And so we have the framework in the recording for the delivery masterclass, and we've even uploaded the PDF for it. So you can literally use it as a reference when you're doing your calls. There are question examples that you can, recommendations that we've put in. You can add your own questions, you can add your own tools to it. But this could be a very powerful set, and I've used the same, we've used the same framework to sell coaching packages anywhere from $5,000 to close to $50,000. So there's like, it's just a matter of you doing it and refining it for yourself. It's a guideline that will help you move forward. So if you want access to that, just type #delivery in the Facebook Live if you're listening to this in the Facebook group, or if you are listening to this again on the podcast or YouTube, just reach out to us in one of the channels that are listed in the details section in there.
All right, Coaches Nation, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We had a great time doing the masterclass and doing this podcast. We're here to serve you. So let us know how we can help, and definitely get that masterclass recording, because I tell you, if you run that even a dozen times, I was going to say 100 times, but just run that a dozen times, you're going to be really dangerous as a salesperson, like in a good way, So enjoy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, take care. Hope you have an incredible day. Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.